First it was 6 weeks to save the euro, then 10 days. Now we're told 24 hours. We're on tenterhooks here in the King's Hall, Stoke-on-Trent. Welcome to Question Time. And with me on our panel here, Simon Wolfson, the boss of the high street chain Next, which has a turnover of several billion pounds a year, the Conservative MP and former banker Claire Perry, the historian and Labour MP Tristram Hunt, Mehdi Hasan of the new Statesman, and Constance Briscoe is one of Britain's first black female judges. Thank you very much. Our first question from Mike Petty, our first question tonight. Mr. Petty.
Does David Cameron have the necessary bulldog spirit to deal with the euro crisis?
Mehdi Hasan.
No, but not for the reason you think. I'll come on to a moment why I think he shouldn't be going to Brussels with a bulldog spirit. He should be going to try and defend British national interest, European interests, we are a European country, and global interests, because if the euro fails, we are on the verge of another global depression. We are going to see mass unemployment, all sorts of chaos, the likes of which will make the 2008 crisis look like a walk in the park. Cameron, however, has failed, and it's not just Cameron, all of the European leaders have failed to show some visionary leadership at the moment. But our Prime Minister in particular, at this moment of crisis, is busy dealing with all sorts of domestic problems. He's dealing with people like Claire and backbench Tory MPs who are causing him all sorts of problems. And the way to think of the Eurozone crisis is, you know, imagine a car speeding towards the edge of a cliff. It's about to drive over the edge of a cliff. Angela Merkel is at the wheel, driving away, firmly staring ahead. Nicolas Sarkozy is next to her trying to read the map and give her some advice. And there is our Prime Minister bound and gagged in the boot of the car with absolutely no influence on what is going on. They're not interested in listening to him because he's got very little constructive things to say apart from, I want things for me and my party. Otherwise I'm not going to play.
Hang on. Doesn't he have a veto? Isn't the implication of what's going on tonight in Brussels that if they want all 27 to agree...
Well, we don't know if he has a veto. As the Luxembourg...
Do you think he does?
Well, it depends what they come up with as a deal tomorrow. The claim is that if he tries to be obstructive, if one British country, if one Britain against 26 other countries tries to operate a veto which prevents a deal, then they will go ahead 17 countries without us. The problem is we have a Prime Minister, who's not gone with any kind of constructive mindset. They know, they're not stupid in Brussels. Everyone else is trying to sort out the biggest crisis in modern European history. We have a Prime Minister whose backbenchers are telling him to go with the bulldog spirit so they can bring back employment rights and holiday rights and all these rights that the Tory backbenchers have wanted back from the Europeans for many years. And it's just not a constructive attitude.
Claire Perry.
Well, Mehdi, the thing that Britain also has is a very large contribution to the EU. We're one of the largest contributing economies, and I think that, as well as David Cameron's actually dogged spirit, Mr. Petty, towards solving this crisis, is what will mean that we have a seat at the table. It's been very interesting. What we have now is not the kind of constitutional crisis that politicians have talked about in dark room for years. We have an economic crisis that is threatening to put the world back into a very, very dark place, let alone just the British economy. And it is absolutely right that David Cameron goes out there and negotiates as hard as he can, both for those 17 countries to get together and sort themselves out, to make that experiment that's been going on work. That is in everybody's interest in this country. But also to say, I don't think it's just Tory backbenchers that want to repatriate powers from Brussels, Mehdi, just to correct you. There are all sorts of rules and regulations that are strung round the necks of businesses across this country that have come down from Brussels that business people in my constituency say that they want to get rid of.
Is this the right moment to do that?
Well, it is part of if you're in a negotiation, what you say is this: if you want something from us, we will want something in return. We have to be there.
What powers is he going to come back to the UK with on Saturday, having been in these negotiations? What can we look forward to?
Well, we should come back next week and discuss it, clearly, because it depends on what's put up. It depends. And I hate to say it all depends, politicians do. We have a group of 17 who are trying desperately to work out a political structure that enables them to function direction going forward. There is then a group of 27 who need to be involved in a broader process.
What does Labour want?
What Labour wants is for the Eurozone to work. What Labour wants is to make sure...
Just that one thing.
No, it wants to work. We want the Eurozone to work for Britain and to work for itself. Mehdi is absolutely right. The consequences of a collapse in the Eurozone are terrifying. It would simply not be a 10% loss of GDP perhaps on the continent, but here in the UK we'd lose 5 to 7% of GDP.
So what
if the
should
Eurozone
he say? Should he negotiate at all, or should he just agree with everything that Merkel and...
No. We have particular concerns about working time directives. We have concerns about financial regulations. But the way to do that is not what Cameron has done, which is a very antagonistic diplomatic process. It's our neighbour's house is on fire, and Cameron's response is to work out what he can steal from the basement, rather than thinking about how we can help them, because our economy is tied to theirs. This is in the UK national interest. You know here in Stoke-on-Trent that over the last 3 months it is getting increasingly economically difficult, and that is because of the collapse of markets in the Eurozone. So in the UK national interest, what Cameron should be doing is working out how to make it better, rather than going in there with this Little Englander, Essex bulldog spirit, what can I yip away from these people, rather than thinking about the broader perspective of the euro economy.
I'm sorry, I agree with all of that.
He's from Oxfordshire.
Essex.
Well, he was asked...
British bulldog. He was Essex bulldog.
He was asked...
Andrew Rossendale, the MP who made the question.
It was a mental alignment. He was asked this question by an Essex MP, and there's that swathe of the Conservative Party in Essex, in Kent, who hate the European Union and want to use this as an opportunity to detach us. And that is not in the UK national interest.
That's absolute nonsense.
There's a lot to go. Let me hear from the man up there, and then I'll come to you. Yes?
As recent figures have shown that the public and even the Labour Party itself have very little confidence in Ed Miliband and the Labour Party's record on the economy in general, does the Labour Party have any credibility on this issue at all?
It has profound amounts of credibility because we've been proved right on the big economic question over the last 2 years.
Well, you can't really trust a man who would stab his brother in the back, can you? I mean, let's get real, right? Don't come here and tell us that it's all terribly cosy when you're prepared to do various members of your family down. That's the first point. Secondly, in relation to what should David Cameron do, I mean, it's very difficult for him because, of course, he has two overriding objectives. The first is that he should not give away any more power in this country. That's the first. The second is that he should protect the City of London. They're the two overriding objectives. In addition to that, he should do what he's done very well. He should sit defensively on the fence and encourage the 17 members of the Eurozone to sort out their mess. They should be given every single encouragement whatsoever.
Surely the priority is the UK economy, not the City of London, not just the banks in the City of London.
You've had your say. Just let me finish, please. Having said that, we need to realise that we now have what's called the Merkozy miracle in relation to Sarkozy and Merkel, who have issued a threat to this country. And what they have said is this: if the 27 members of the EU do not agree, then they'll go ahead with the 17 members of the Eurozone.
And what would your reaction be to that? How do you think Cameron should react to that?
In relation to that, Cameron should firstly make it absolutely clear that there should be no realignment of a treaty. We should not, for example, give away... Well, let me take a stage back. If we have an alignment, if we have...
What's an alignment?
If we have a treaty of 17, they will have a strong fiscal union.
Which is what Cameron says he wants.
Which may well be what Cameron says he wants, and that's part of his problem, because he has been promoting that for a very long time when he was in opposition, and now that he is leader, he's been hoisted by...
I must bring you to the point. What is it you think that he's doing right, and what is he doing wrong? Very briefly.
What I think
is he being the bulldog that Mr. Petty wants to see?
He can't be a bulldog, can he? I mean, that's complete nonsense.
He's not even turning up. I mean, look, today in Marseille, all the centre-right parties got together to have a meeting about what to do about the euro. Guess which party wasn't there? The Conservative Party, because Cameron pulled them out in order to win a leadership election, appeases
Europe. I'm sorry, it's not about
and he put his party into an alliance with
What's that about?
He's there at the moment, actually. He's up there. He's there this evening. But this is
all the Conservative parties in Europe get together and have a discussion. Why is David Cameron not there? Because he pulled his party out. Why? To appease Eurosceptic backbenchers. The national interest is not the interest of Tory backbenchers.
Simon Wolfson hasn't spoken yet. Let's hear.
I think Mehdi said something that was very interesting. He said that they're not stupid in Brussels, and I have to say I disagree with that. I mean, let's face it, it was Brussels that designed this insane monetary system that could never have worked in the first place. That is unravelling before our eyes. They designed it, and now they've got to sort out the mess. And ironically, I have to say I support the Prime Minister's attempts to help them, because we should be under no illusion as to what would happen if the euro were to unravel overnight in a disorderly fashion. It would harm everyone in this room, every business in Britain, and the reason for that is very simple. Our banks have lent a lot of money to people in Southern Europe. If those countries drop out of the euro and devalue their currency, then our banks' debts to them will also be devalued, and they will have to take a write-down. Now, those debts are our savings. And we cannot afford to see the banking system seize up again, because if the euro collapses in a disorderly way, then what we will see is something infinitely worse than what we saw when Lehman's collapsed. Having said that, we need to face up to another profound reality, and that is that whilst we've got to fix this patient while it's in intensive care, long term the euro cannot survive. And it can't survive for a very simple reason. And that is nothing to do with the financial markets, it's to do with the labour markets. Over the last 10 years, Greek wages have risen 30% relative to German wages. That means that they're structurally uncompetitive. They're locked into 16% unemployment, Spain into 20% unemployment. Fiscal union will not solve that problem. All it will do is it will guarantee ongoing unemployment in Southern Europe and ongoing taxation in Northern Europe to pay those unemployment benefits. Okay. Long term, the government has got to think about how this thing's dismantled.
And Simon Wolfson, you've offered £250,000 to anyone who can come up with the answer to this question.
I have.
Got 150 people here waiting to win 250.
Here is the answer.
£250,000. The woman in the third row there, and then the man behind you. Yes.
Yes. In answer to you, I wonder how David Cameron got into the boot of that car, and if he's in that boot, can't he come out and do what other, sensible economists are trying to do? Focus on Africa and other places? Because even if we go with this new treaty that I'm sure he will bully it into it, there is no guarantee that it's going to work.
You talked about...
What if it doesn't work? Then we are stuck. The Eurozone is only a very small part of the world.
But it's a vital point, because the emerging markets, India, China, Africa, they are interested in the UK as part of the European Union. We cannot succeed on these sort of post-colonial bilateral relationships that this government thinks it can build. We are part of a big trading bloc, and we need to make it work. And David Cameron is not doing that because he has to appease the Tory party.
The man just behind you. I'll come to Claire now.
Can I just say that the bankers messed the country up in 2008. Cameron's going over there to protect the bankers of the City of London yet again. The area of North Staffordshire has been crippled. There's no manufacturing, no jobs here. And the last big employer, which is the public sector, they're now battering them as well. And I think it's a disgrace that Europe is dragging us all into their mire.
And I speak as someone who worked in financial services 10 years ago. I have been sanitised by motherhood since then, sir. So it was a long time ago. But it's not just bankers. It's Britannia Building Society, that very important local business. These are, so just if I may, these are financial services companies, all of whom are currently subject to 49 pieces of European regulation and legislation. And what we need to do is, of course, we need to...
We shouldn't be deregulating them, Claire. We shouldn't allow the kind of liberty opportunities which they took advantage of and then brought our economy down.
Here, Tristram. This should be regulated by British economists and British politicians, not by Europe.
Market.
And that's what we need to do.
He wants to come back.
You've just said about regulation. HSBC were robbing old people of their pensions and their money like Dick Turpin named their own. Nobody's been accountable. Nobody's accountable for that. And it should be.
Nobody what? The applause covered you, Evan.
I said nobody's accountable. Why hasn't any of the top bankers
do you want the European Brussels making decisions about that,
Well,
or do you want that regulation done?
If it'd be out of Europe so that we decide
I
ourselves.
want it in Great Britain.
One at a time, please, otherwise nobody can hear anybody. Briefly, Mehdi.
The gentleman makes the most important point of all, which is every time David Cameron and Conservative MPs talk about the national interest, what they're really talking about is the interest of the City of London. The same City of London that caused this crash. So there's a report out today that the banking crash cost us 5 years of growth. It will take 2013 to get back to 2008. For the last few weeks, we've had Conservative MPs mocking the Labour Party because they are funded by the trade unions. Never forget that the Conservative Party gets 50% of its funding from the City of London. That's why it's their interest to go out and defend the banks.
Is he wrong, then, to try and defend the city from more taxation?
I'll tell you why.
How much taxation does the City of London financial services provide to the UK as a whole?
The financial transactions tax, which is something he's trying to protect the city from, would raise 59 billion euros. It's supported by some of the world's top economists, Bill Gates, Joseph Stiglitz, a lot of interesting people, a lot of important people say this is an important tax which will help prevent another crisis, and our government says no, we don't want any part of it. 0.05% on transactions, which could raise £20 billion for people in this country. That's what Cameron's going to stop. I wish he wouldn't. I'm with Mercosi on that.
It's very easy to beat the banks up, and I would just point out this transaction tax. You know, Sarkozy's not doing this for ideological or altruistic reasons. He's doing it for a very simple reason. That is, the British banks will end up paying 35% of that tax. Britain will end up paying tax to Europe if that tax is introduced. But I think the gentleman makes another very interesting and important point, and that is about manufacturing. Because one of the other effects of the Euros is in as much as southern European countries' currencies, in effect, are overvalued, Germany's currency is dramatically undervalued. In effect, Germany are undercutting UK prices by 15 to 20% as a result of this absurd monetary structure, which is another reason why we have to go back to it and say we need to think again.
Okay, let's come back to the... we'll take a second question on this and come back to what some people see as the nub of the matter for the Conservative Party and the Tory Party leader. Roger Thomas has a question. Could I just say, if you're tweeting tonight about this sort of thing, you want to join in the debate, remember our hashtag, I'm sure you know it, is BBCQT, and you can text us 83981, the red button to see what others are saying, or you can go to CFAX page 155 if you're watching the old-fashioned way. Yes, Roger Thomas, please.
If the EU treaty is amended, will David Cameron be forced to hold a referendum?
So if the treaty is amended, which is what Angela Merkel is saying she wants, will David Cameron be forced to hold a referendum? Claire Perry, you know what Cameron said in 2007, a cast-iron guarantee if he'll hold a referendum on any EU treaty that emerges from the negotiations that were going on then. Would he be forced to hold one now, as several members of his party suggest he should?
One of the first things us new backbenchers were asked to get involved in was an act of Parliament that meant actually this is never David Cameron's decision, or the decision on referenda will never be again in the gift of a political party. It is now enshrined in law that if any treaty proposal suggests we should be transferring powers to Europe, which was done several times with various constitutional treaties over the last 20 years, it will automatically be put to a referendum. So it's not David Cameron's decision, it's not the decision of various backbenchers. I have to say, I have always thought a referendum would be a good thing, because the AV referendum was a chance for the British people to get involved in actually some quite complicated arguments and understand the facts. And the problem with the whole debate about Europe is it happens in a fact-free vacuum.
So you're in favour
so much
of
of the time. But I think the problem with the referendum is what's the question? Now, I think we have to be involved in the European trading bloc for all the reasons Tristram said.
What would your question be?
Well, I think the question is we will have a referendum on certain powers. Do people think it is appropriate to transfer this power to Brussels?
You'd want that, not should we be in the EU?
Well, I think the notion of saying should we be in or out of a trading bloc is actually a slightly redundant question at this point. But let's have the facts in front of the British people. We have been denied the opportunity opportunity for decades to actually say, and I think this is why people have become so heated about this, because they're so frustrated. We have never been given an opportunity to actually have a democratic vote on this process.
Tristram Hunt.
Technically, there's no need for a referendum, because it will be a consolidation of powers within the Euro 17. It will not be a transfer of powers from the UK to the Eurozone. The problem is, David Cameron pandered to the Eurosceptic part of his party. He made them all sorts of promises about repatriation, about referendums, a nudge and a wink. Because astonishingly, I read his speeches to my horror.
So he was making those promises
he was trying
to the country,
hold on
perhaps.
to that part of the party. So they think they're going to get a referendum.
Sorry, what's the quote you'd use to support?
Well, six weeks ago he was talking about repatriation. Throughout his time in terms of the leadership of the party, he said, we sceptics, at the Mansion House speech a few weeks ago, we sceptics are going to do this. His entire language is hostile to Europe. This is what is holding his coalition together. So it is no surprise they think they should be allowed a referendum. I personally would not be in favour of a referendum on this, because again, look at the situation that happened in Greece. There was a massive crisis about the Eurozone. Papandreou offered a referendum. The whole thing went into meltdown for another few weeks, and it got nowhere. This is a crisis. We need action over the next 2 days if we're going to save the Eurozone.
Now is not the time for a referendum.
I completely agree. What we don't want is a 2-3 month battle over a referendum.
You say over there. Let's see what our audience thinks about referendums.
Referendum. If you give the British people the arguments to support being pro-EU, then at least give them the credibility to understand them and make a reasoned judgment.
Exactly.
The politicians do not want a referendum because they do not trust us to come up with your answer.
But it doesn't necessarily affect the UK. What's going on in terms of the debates tonight and tomorrow will not necessarily affect UK power relations. What you'll have is a consolidation of powers amongst the Eurozone. We're not in the Euro, and I agree with that. And if there was a chance of joining the Euro, then we should have the referendum, and we should have that discussion, we should have that debate, because that is a seismic political question.
He says you'll only have a referendum if you think you'll win it. The man up there in the second, third, you're not interested in what the public says.
I'm always interested in what the public says.
Yeah, but you won't let them have a vote, is what he says. But
I will let them have a vote.
Well, not now. If you want to.
I'm trying to agree with you. I'm trying to agree.
Yeah, go on, sir.
Britain's best interests do not lie at the periphery of the European Union. If David Cameron goes to the European summit and comes back with a referendum, it just shows the weakness of his leadership. If we leave the inner sanctum of the Eurozone, which is France and Germany, then we are going to be a weaker nation for it, and it'll just...
There's no leadership.
That's exactly right.
The man up there at the back, and then I come to you.
I think that's absolutely right, and I think...
Which bit? What he said?
The bit of what he said here, and also a friend down here to a certain extent. I don't think the politicians trust us to be honest enough and to be straightforward enough to give them the sort of decision that they want. If they do decide to hold a referendum, they'll have to budget for at least 2 of them, because if we have the nerve to give the answer that Europe doesn't like, we'll be referendum to death until we give the answer they do like.
Like Ireland.
Do the panel think that David Cameron ought to actually make a decision, because he doesn't seem to appear to want to be a part of the club? All he wants is the financial benefits in relation to business, but doesn't want any benefits or any of the complications and obligations that go with Europe.
And they
So you either want to be a member of the club or you don't.
Simon Wolfson.
I mean, absolutely. If that's what the Prime Minister wants, all the financial benefits of the European Union, all the financial benefits of a free market, free movement of people, free movement of capital, and doesn't want all the absurd regulation and rules and red tape that go with being part of the EU, then that is exactly the right thing to go for. Why should we accept a whole host of regulation in this country? Why should we accept that in order to have the economic benefits of being part of a trade union? I'm all in favour of being part of the EU. I'm not all in favour of the powers and chores that they give our industry.
Just before we leave this, and thank you. Before we leave this before we leave this and go on to another subject, can I just ask all of you panellists, do any of you think that it would be reasonable for the Prime Minister to come back with nothing, as they say, with nothing, simply having helped the French and the Germans restore the strength of the euro?
Yes.
You do?
Absolutely.
Just to say, well, the euro is running now.
I think that's
I didn't want to alter the fishery policy.
I think that's probably the safest course for him.
Right.
He's got the Eurosceptics on one side, he's got the EU, and then he's got his national audience. And the best thing for him to do is to come back and say, I told them to sort out the mess, and they've promised me they're going to do it, and to appease Angela Merkel, to appease Sarkozy, to make sure that they don't have an inner sanctum from the 27 to 15, and to make absolutely sure that they do not have the Central Economic Bank getting involved with the 17 so that they can then buy bonds and have quantitative easing. So come back empty-handed and everyone will be happy.
Come back empty-handed. Mehdi.
I've just got to pick up on a couple of clear things very quickly. One is, you said that people have never had a chance to answer the original question, which I haven't answered.
They haven't.
They've never had a chance to vote on Europe. They can vote in every general election. UKIP and BNP offer a way out. They don't get many votes.
Yeah.
Just on, you also say that it's not David Cameron's decision to hold a referendum, and yet this week Ian Duncan-Smith said he should hold a referendum. Owen Paterson said we should hold a referendum, the Northern Ireland Secretary, and the Mayor of London said we should. Owen Paterson and the Mayor of London, Boris Johnson, said we should hold a referendum.
So what?
And yet,
so what?
And it's they all think it's David Cameron's decision to make. Downing Street has been slapping them down all week. I note tonight that there's a Conservative peer and a Conservative MP, no cabinet ministers from the Conservative Party, because they're all running scared on this issue. They know very well that they cannot come out with a straight face and say no referendum when their Prime Minister dabbled in all this referendum renegotiation rubbish.
You said in the fourth row.
The one thing that everyone here would ask that you guys do is to pull together and get us through this.
Absolutely right.
And Tristram, if I may, get your leader to stop yapping like a little poodle.
I don't think that's fair at all, because actually...
Well, you wouldn't, would you?
No, not in public, or private. Because what Ed focused on with brilliance this week was the political crisis that David Cameron faces. Because it's absolutely fine, as Constance says, that he comes back with nothing, and he's helped our European partners, and he's shown he's a good European, and he believes Britain is part of Europe. But instead, he's made promise after promise that he will use any treaty renegotiation to repatriate powers. Well, here is a treaty renegotiation, Prime Minister. What powers are you repatriating?
It's the wrong time.
Absolutely
It's the wrong time, isn't it?
You said.
It's the wrong time.
Referring to what Mehdi Hasan said, in fact, we were given the opportunity, supposedly, of a vote on Europe in the general election. As soon as the party got in power, it was dropped.
That was the Labour Party commitment.
Right. Brief point from you, Simon, and then we must...
Well, I just want to agree with what you were saying there, because I find it extraordinary that we've had this conversation about the euro, and from 3 of our 5 panellists have spent more time talking about party leaders than actually about the currency.
Because we're off. To be fair, that was the first question.
Now, we'll take a brief break and divert to Liam Hodgkinson, please.
Is it right for the government to double the Olympic ceremony's budget to £80 million?
This week it was announced that the budget for the opening of the Olympic Games controversially increased by £40 million. Enough, I'm told, to pay for 1,000 teachers, or double the grant they gave this year to end-of-life care in the hospices. Constance Briscoe, do you think it's right for the government?
No, I don't. I think this is another example of the extraordinary waste that the government is prepared to get into, wasting taxpayers' money. And they set a budget, they go beyond it, and then they glibly say that we're going to increase it. I think it's absolutely scandalous. That's my view. But once
Simon Wolfson?
I mean, the eyes of the world are going to be turned on Britain when the Olympics go. Billions of people, literally, over 1 billion people will be watching the Olympics in this country. The thing that they will focus on the most are the opening and closing ceremonies.
Not 100 metres.
I mean, in terms of judging the country. And, you know, it strikes me as extraordinarily penny-pinching to say that we're prepared to have a second-rate Olympics And for the world to see us like that, for the sake of what sounds like a lot of money, but in the context of a government spending 600 billion is actually a drop in the ocean. We need to think very carefully about this. What do we want the world to think of us? We've got 4 hours to tell the world what Britain's about, and we're not prepared to spend 40 million pounds. We're not prepared to spend 40 million pounds.
When they agreed the budget in the first place, they knew precisely what the cost was going to be for a first-rate Olympics. I mean, what is it suggesting, that we negotiated something that was second or third rate?
Absolutely.
So you think it was sleight of hand? They wouldn't let us know at the beginning? And
well, that's what's being suggested here. What's happened is they've got it wrong. Again.
The woman there on the right.
Britain's not about singing, dancing and fireworks. There's more to us than that. And we're in a tight financial time. Surely we should be showing the world that we can pull about in.
So how would you start? How would you start the Olympic Games? Just by having 100 metres final? Over in a day. You, sir, in the second row here.
Simon Wolfson says that it's penny pinching. I'll tell you what is penny pinching. Stoke-on-Trent City Council have closed a gym to save £50,000 where hundreds of people who are disadvantaged and overweight could join for free. How many more of those gyms nationwide are we going to have to close so that we can have some fireworks?
Yes, you, sir.
What I was going to say is that you talk about penny pinching, and I agree with the gentleman down there. £40 million. It may be a drop in the ocean to the government in terms of their budget. That is a huge amount of money. You think about 1,000 teachers. I'm a trainee teacher myself. The amount of work that not just maybe 1,000 teachers, but 1,000, say, support workers in schools that do an absolutely vital job. A lot of those jobs are going, and that's really hurting the education system at the moment in this country. £40 million to people like that. People on low incomes is a massive amount of money. A massive amount of money.
Claire Perry, do you support the doubling of
as I came to catch the train up, very good train service to Stoke, I went through
Stop flattering Stoke,
Trafalgar,
just as you're in Stoke.
through Trafalgar Square, and there's a big clock that ticks down to the Olympics, and I noted it was 265 days to the Olympics. And I think it's going to be a fantastic event. The eyes of the world will be on us. It's like the royal wedding. We do this stuff incredibly well. It's very good for our economy. But in some cases, I completely agree with you, sir, because when money is tight, surely the thing to do is say, right, that's the amount of money we've got. How far can we make it stretch? Could you not go to suppliers and say, come on, guys, let's get together. This is great for Britain. How about we get those double-decker buses for free? And I want to see every single penny spent incredibly carefully and incredibly wisely at the current time. So, it might be a good investment. We can look after the event, but I'm a little disappointed that at this late stage, we're actually chucking a bit more money at it.
What the lady there said. Anyone come to Next asking for money to support the game?
Actually, we have sponsored.
What have you sponsored?
We're sponsoring the opening and closing, but I'm not allowed to say that on TV, am I?
But if you're sponsoring the opening and closing, why don't you?
If you're sponsoring the opening and closing, that explains why you think it's the two most important events of the Olympics.
We're sponsoring because we think it is important.
We want a better deal.
We're going to get. I mean, Simon, on a serious point, you are one of the Chancellor's biggest cheerleaders when it comes to cuts. A year ago, you wrote a letter to Telegraph. You said these cuts are important. They will revive the economy. Business confidence will go up. Consumer confidence will go up. It won't damage the recovery. You were wrong on all those things. You wrote that letter calling for cuts, and then you sit here and say £40 million is a drop in the ocean, it's penny pinching, when all of these public services are being closed down, Shrill Start centres are being hit, teachers pay, all of these issues. I don't understand how the Prime Minister can tell us all about austerity, the need for everyone to share the pain, etc., etc. And then when he's shown a video, as I believe he was earlier this week, and says, actually, I don't like that, yes, we'll go to £41 million extra. At the drop of a hat, suddenly, the money's always there when you need to find the money. £41 million for the Olympics, £4 billion a year for Afghanistan. But when it comes to actual basic public services or public sector workers or the poorest people, then, oh no, then everyone tightens their belt. Then it's never a drop in the ocean.
Okay.
As part of the government cuts, they cut the school sports funding, which was part of the Olympic legacy. I can't understand how now they're justifying spending an extra £40 million on a glorified party.
The people of the city here, this great city, have raised a very good point in terms of the reductions that we've had to take in terms of funding. across the city. It seems to me like a case of one rule for government and another for local communities.
All right. Tristram Hunt, this is your constituency. Without bidding for their vote, what's irresistible temptation, no doubt? What is your view on the £40 million extra being spent on the Olympic opening?
Well, I wouldn't have so much of a problem if some of that £40 million came to Stoke-on-Trent on May the 30th and May the 31st next year, when we have the flame come through the city, and we will show the Staffordshire Hoard off to the world and all the other wonders of the city. Sorry. There's a very brilliant book called Austerity Olympics about the last time the Olympics was in London in 1948, after the in the post-war year after World War II, and how they created a brilliant account of Britain and how they ran an absolutely brilliant Olympics on a shoestring. And they celebrated the spirit of Britain very successfully. They celebrated the spirit of Commonwealth very, very successfully, by cleverly managing it. There's this lovely quote that we have no money, therefore we will have to think. And that's what I wish the Olympics would do, because they are throwing money around, and you can see it in London, and it is a total waste of money. And I would much rather have I would much rather have a smart, stylish, sophisticated, clever Olympics than the kind of bloated one we're having, because we will not be able to outdo Beijing. You know, this is going to be a different Olympics, and we should be thinking cleverly.
I mean, most opening ceremonies and closing ceremonies are deeply vulgar and over the top and excessive.
I think this one's costing.
All right, I'll just take a couple more points from our audience. The gentleman up there at the very far right. And have you spoken already or not? No, I'll come to you.
Wait.
Up there.
Britain's international image, generally that we're more reserved, we're more uptight, we're more modest. It's not really showing what Britain really is if we're going to start saying, oh, we're all dancing, we're all high-flying. And just showing, and it just shows the world we're not being responsible, especially since 2012 is meant to be our worst financial year before we actually get back to 2008 levels in 2013.
But aren't people excited about the Olympics?
Yes, people are excited.
Who's got Olympic tickets?
Yes,
it's going to be fantastic.
Who's got Olympic tickets
in the audience? Is anyone getting it? No, through the process. I mean, it's exciting.
BBC presenters, everyone else online. I got the weightlifting one. I'm very excited.
We've got the wrestling.
For a start, I went into the bid for Olympic tickets and I didn't get them.
Better luck next time.
But I am a London Olympic
40 years.
ambassador.
The next lot, there's going to be another go-round of tickets, aren't there? I hope. Fingers crossed.
Sorry, but I am going to be a London Olympics ambassador, and I have seen a lot of the plans that they've made for the Olympic Park itself, and personally I don't think 40,000 is enough. I think it's way too much. I just think it's a vanity project.
What are you going to do as ambassador, then?
We're meeting and greeting all the foreign dignitaries.
Oh, right. In that uniform, in that sort of
I don't
uniform
know.
with the stripes?
Oh, no, that's the
games we're paying for all the foreign dignitaries.
We haven't seen the ambassador's uniform yet.
Have you seen the ambassador's uniform? Yeah? Have you seen it?
No.
Oh, right.
I know it involves a trilby.
Okay. I think we'd better move on. We've got. Let's take another question, though we can't, because I've lost my question. There, here we are. This is a question from David Safey, please. David Safey.
Has Britain become less compassionate towards the unemployed?
This is a question, I think, Mr. Safey, isn't it, based on this report that came out this week, which showed that whereas in 1983, these questions have been asked every year since 1983, 35% of people thought that unemployment benefits were too high. Now, 54% of Britain believes unemployment benefits are too high and that it discourages the unemployed from finding jobs. That was the finding. So have we become a less compassionate society towards the unemployed? Claire Perry.
One of the statistics that I thought was very positive also this week was that giving to charities is at record levels. More people are giving to charity than at any other time. So I don't think we're having a sort of compassion fatigue in the country. What I think we're seeing is people are sick to death of a sort of something for nothing culture. Whether it's bankers at the top or benefit scroungers at the bottom, I think people are fed up with that. But actually, if you're on JSA getting £67.50 a week, I think it is, that is not a huge amount of money. And the problem is, of course, people get left on benefits for a really long time. Not enough effort is made to get people back to work. I noticed in this constituency, of course, that unemployment's been going up essentially for years as the jobs are harder and harder to come by. But I think people are fed up with this notion that you can sit on benefits your whole life. We have to get people back into work, and we have to show that we're doing things in a compassionate and fair way. Mehdi, people like you attack us every single week for being somehow heartless and mean. We've uprated the benefits by over 5% so that pensioners will get more in their pension pots this year than ever before, and unemployed people will see their benefits go up. Those are people who are really struggling at the moment.
But do you think, Claire, that the majority of people in this country, according to this survey, are wrong to think that unemployment benefits are too high and are discouraging people from finding jobs?
Well, I think there is a benefit. There is a trap in the system now where if you go onto benefits and you lose your job, the system traps you. The welfare state has stopped being a trampoline and started being a big mattress that kind of smothers you and keeps you in there forever. Because if you're a single mum with kids, it is very, very difficult to go out to work. Right now, you lose your childcare benefits very early on in the work process. It's very difficult to find flexible work. We make it really hard for people to get off benefits, and I think that is the problem.
I don't think that's right at all. Forgive me, I think we spend far too much time subsidising people who really don't want to work. That's the first point. Right? In this country, we have a something-for-nothing attitude. The disparity between those who go out to work and those who stay at home is not significant enough. And we have got to wisen up. My view is that too many people are on benefit and they can go out to work. And we should encourage them to do so. And all this malarkey about, well, you know, this is really terrible and we need to soak them all up into this big sponge paid for by the taxpayer, I'm afraid is nonsense. People who genuinely cannot work should be assisted and helped. There are plenty of those about, but having said that, there are others who choose not to work, and we should find them and encourage them to go out. I've no idea. You're the politician. You're the politician. You tell me.
Just wait a minute, would you? The woman up there on the left.
Yeah, I don't think it's so much the £67.50 a week on job seekers' allowance that's the problem. It's the cost of living, the housing cost, the rent of £400, £500 a month, when the average wage is something like, in this area, probably £12,000 a year. We've got, housing costs spiralling out of control because there isn't enough affordable accommodation for people, and the housing stock that's empty, about 90% of that, I think, is privately owned, and the government can do nothing at all about that, and that's where the problem needs to be sorted out.
So what's your reaction to this finding that a majority of people think unemployment benefit is too high and is stopping people working? Do you think that's correct?
I think they don't sort of realise, because I actually, this might be very popular, I'm actually of the view that if you take in your job seekers allowance and the council tax and your living cost, your rent or mortgage or whatever, then I think everyone should work for a couple of 3 days a week. I think if you look at it, £500 a month plus your benefit plus your council tax, probably a couple of days a week, it comes to the minimum wage. If the government set up manufacturing type companies and people could work there, get people back into work, but actually give people some skills as well.
Right.
You're saying about people don't want to work. I know loads of people that are on benefit that want to work. There just aren't the jobs out there.
Okay. Man in blue there. Man in the blue
Why is it that working tax credit has been frozen and yet job seekers' allowance is to be increased by 5.2%?
Yeah, exactly.
If you want to encourage people to work.
You think that was a bad decision? Tristan was nodding his head. Do you think that was a bad decision?
I think you want to make every single move possible in terms of the tax and benefit system to make sure that people are doing the right thing, which is what working tax credits was about. It was about supporting those on low wages to go to work and stay in work rather than having a lifetime on benefit. benefits. And this is a particular problem with generations of worklessness. Those who went out of the mines and the steel industry in the 1980s and were stuck on incapacity benefit and then never worked, and their children haven't worked, and even their grandchildren haven't worked. So we need all those routes back into work. But the problem is, as the lady suggested at the back, what we do not have at the moment is a growing economy for jobs, either in the manufacturing sector or the services sector, which will provide them with an avenue towards that. So we need the tax and benefit system to work to make people into work, but we also need the jobs.
But what do you say to his point that the priorities were wrong when the 5.2% was given to those on unemployment benefit and on pensions?
I think that
it distorted
No. I think the system is flawed, because what happened was they take 1 month's inflation figure of 5.2% and apply it to the entirety of benefits for the next year. What I think they should do is take the year-long average and apply that.
So you would have endorsed a lower figure if the
Yes, I would have endorsed a lower figure to make sure that it was more competitive to work, but I certainly wouldn't have done what this government has done, which is attack working tax credits.
The Chancellor too generous is what you're saying.
That's my point. I'm not against...
It's a more nuanced point than that, David.
It sounds very nuanced to me. The Chancellor gave away too much money.
Too much money to the
Yes,
poorest
sir.
people.
Well, I'm a deficit. I believe in paying down the deficit.
Yes, sir.
Are unemployment benefits too high, or are wages too low? The number of people... I'm an employer, and the number of people I know that want to work and say, why should I go to work, lose all my benefit for £10 a week more? There's no incentive for some people. It's the system that needs overhauling. Yeah. We're told it's going to be overhauled by successive governments, and it never is.
But hang on. Explain a bit more. You have people who how do you... They come to you looking for a job and then say, why should I work?
Yes, because when I tell them the wage that I can offer them, they lose all their benefit then.
Yeah.
Now, I can't offer them the wage they might want or need, but it's so close to the benefit that there's no incentive for them to come because they lose everything. Why should they lose everything?
And so you're absolutely right. And
why should they lose everything?
This is another
just when they're really keen to go to work, and if they get into work, they'll advance themselves, but they lose everything.
So your remedy is to lower the benefits of being out of work.
Yes,
so that being in work pays better without increasing the wages.
Instead of losing all the benefits, lose some of them.
Benefits.
All right.
So that
Mehdi Hasan, what do you say to that? Thank you.
I totally agree. I think all the parties and everyone who looks at the subject agrees that there is an incentive issue, there's a poverty trap.
So why don't they do something about it? Why don't they do something about it?
I've just got to come in just on a factual point, just come back to the original question. The question was about compassion, about unemployment benefit. Claire helpfully mentioned £67.50 a week. I wonder how many of those people who were polled were told that the unemployment benefit was £67.50 and then said it was generous. I suspect a lot of people think it's generous without even knowing what it is. And there's a lot of misinformation in this debate. The lady in the audience there talked about housing benefit and the cost of housing benefit. A lot of housing benefit, as huge swathes of the housing benefit budget, goes to people in work. It doesn't just go to jobless people. It's for people in work on low wages who still can't afford to get by. Constance says lots of people are just sitting on mattresses, sponges, I don't know what inflatable metaphor she used, but she doesn't know how many. You don't have any idea how many people.
I'm not a politician.
Well, then you should make sweeping generalizations about people in this country.
You are avoiding the question that has been... Well, why don't you answer the question?
2.7 million people in this country.
Answer the question.
I'm answering the question.
So
are we not compassionate to unemployed people? Yes, we are, and I'll tell you why. Because there are 2.7 million people unemployed in this country, a 17-year high under Claire's government. There are 5.7 people chasing every job. People on this panel are saying they should go out and get work. I'm no mathematician. How do you squeeze 5 people into one job? There are 5 people chasing every job in this country. So why doesn't this government create more jobs?
Maybe, that's fine, okay. Simon Wolfson, you're I don't know how many people you employ, you're a big employer. What's your view of this?
Well, I think, I'm going to have to say I agree with Mehdi. I think, actually, my experience is there are far more people applying for jobs than we've got jobs to give. That's the first thing to say. There are, of course, Constance, there are people who play the system, and the system that's played more than any other, incidentally, is the disability benefits rather than unemployment benefits. But to say that people are deliberately staying in unemployment because they have the luxury of £67.50 a week to spend
it's not just that,
is absurd. It's absolutely absurd, and it's just not in touch with the reality. The reality is there are a lot of people looking for jobs, and there aren't enough jobs to go around, and that's, I'm afraid, going to remain the situation for quite some time. And what we need to make sure is that, first of all, the government roots out the people who are taking advantage of the system, because ultimately they're taking money away from the people who deserve it. The second we've got to make sure that people who are unemployed are getting enough money so they can feed themselves and look after themselves properly.
But Simon,
we're a civilised society.
Don't we also need a proper industrial and economic strategy which grows the economy and brings in jobs?
Well, we do, but we haven't got... If we want to talk about that, we can do, but we're talking about benefits at the moment. No, you can't.
Can I just say that the gentleman's point here is absolutely spot on. It should always be that work pays more than being on benefits. And right now we have all sorts of disincentives where if people do go to work, they lose far too much. And this, so it's another politician's promise, but I think we should have a lot more cross-party consensus on this, actually getting people into work. This is what we're planning to do. This is what the universal credit will do. So work always pays more than being on benefits. And I would hope all people support it.
Now, I want to hear from some members of our audience. I just get the woman up there had her hand up. Yes, you.
I was just going to say about, like you're saying, there's no jobs or anything, or very few, but there are jobs. It's just you've got to look for them, and there's no incentive to look for them. The minimum wage for a student is like £3 something. I used to, like a job that I used to have, because there was few hours, they used to give me small hours, so whatever I used to earn, I used to pay in expenses just to get there. So I didn't see the point in going.
And you, sir, over there, just some comments, if you would, rather than questions to the panel.
I do believe there are jobs in the economy. I'm a director of a company in Stoke-on-Trent, and we've recruited probably 15 or 16 people. We've doubled the workforce in the last year. But unfortunately, a lot of those people don't stick around. We've taken on people, for every 4 people that we take on, only 1 or 2 remain in a job after 6 months. And these are young people who are 17 and 18 who should be relishing the opportunity. Yeah. So it's not clear-cut that...
What kind of business is it
we're a manufacturing company in Stoke-on-Trent.
And that is part of the cultural legacy of worklessness.
It's unfortunate, that is the fact, yes.
Okay. And you, sir, in the third row.
I just think this is a symptom of failing government policy year on year. Instead of quantity of easing and putting billions of pounds into the bank vaults for them to save for a rainy day, they should be investing that in local businesses, small businesses, and like the gentleman at the front said, making it more affordable way to increase people's wages and incentivise them to pay taxes and work, and then the circle of prosperity returns.
I'll take a couple more points. The woman there in red. The woman in red there, in the third row from the back, yes.
I think even if hundreds of jobs were made, it's not fair on young people. I mean, people at the age of 17, they're getting turned down for lack of experience. How do you expect young people to gain experience when you're not giving us the chance?
As well as the cuts to EMA in this city in terms of the education.
And you, the lady here in the front, yes.
Would it not be better to stop forcing older people to work longer to free up jobs for the younger people?
Okay. We've got a lot of people with hands up, but I just want to move on because we've got time for one more question. From Liz Fletcher, please. Liz Fletcher.
Does the lack of recognition in female sporting achievement in the BBC Sports Personality Awards reflect sexist reporting practices in the media?
Sexist reporting practices in the media. This was a big story about the failure of any women to come through the Personality Awards, but also at a time when people are talking about women's role in business, women's role in public life, the number of women who appear on question time panels, all sorts of things. Constance Briscoe.
I think it was really very regrettable that there were no women in that award, but it's typical, and unfortunately that's what we should expect at the moment. It seems to me that you have a role in the media if you are, for example, very pretty and of a certain age, and it's early in the morning. You tend to get very attractive women as presenters. As the day rolls on, you tend to get, for example, people like me of a certain age that they don't really want because we're past our sell-by date.
And, we're not speaking of question time. We've pleaded with you to come here, and we're delighted to have you.
And I'm delightful to be here. But having
you are
said
delightful
that,
and delighted.
I'm delighted. But having said that, if you're a bloke, if you're a man of a certain age, you don't have a sell-by date. The older you get, the better it is. You're like really
I didn't know about that. Right.
Well, all right. It's a bit like a good bottle of wine. They just get better and better and better with age. Whereas if you're a woman, you've got no chance. So the serious point is, it really is about time that there were more women, not just in the media, but dealing with serious issues during peak times during the day.
Okay.
And sometimes I do think I'd much prefer to be an elderly white gentleman aged round about 70 because I'd have more job opportunities. Really, but
okay.
There you are.
Claire Perry, I should point out it wasn't the BBC, of course, who chose these. It was editors of sporting newspapers.
Yes, but
I don't know why the BBC didn't lean on them.
That's a bit of an
they
excuse.
normally lean on people, but they didn't lean.
I don't know if the lady's got daughters. I've got 2 daughters, and one of the hardest things is to get teenage girls to go out and exercise and play team sports. Little boys seem to have no trouble getting a game of football, but getting little girls to go and do, or big girls to go and do anything is really, really difficult. And I know these were suggested by other people, but who here knew that we have a world-beating women's cricket team at the moment, or that the women's a few people, great heads, or the women's rugby team are absolutely world-class. It's never reported.
Or that we're going to win the skeet shooting championship.
Well, no, but again, I think, David, you're doing these things down. There are amazing women.
On the contrary,
there are amazing women out there.
I've seen the people who are competing for the skeet shooting,
and I think one of the most depressing images is the fantastic cyclists and swimmers that we have, who won gold medals, who will win gold medals at next year's Fantastic Olympics, have to pose in scanty underwear shots to get any sort of recognition. I think it's really appalling, and I think the BBC should actually start covering some of the fantastic women's sporting events that we have out there.
Good. Let's including the shooting. Simon Wolfson now. Simon Wolfson, let's just enlarge this bit. Just under 14% of FTSE 100 board positions are held by women. What's your take on women's role? You've heard what's said about 73-year-old men who can stay in work.
Yes, well,
one day you'll be 73.
Hopefully.
And you may even be in a job.
I think it's interesting. I mean, I don't agree with Constance, because I don't think the media is representative. I don't think the media is representative of the whole of society. And certainly, in my business, we have a huge number of very senior female executives who are picked entirely on merit. And indeed, in the law, but your practice, you must see that women are being picked on merit. And I think the world is changing. What's interesting is if you look at the main board of the company I work for, there's 1 woman on the board. If you look at the layer beneath that, that's 20 years younger, 20 of 22 directors, 9 of them are women. And what that reflects, I think, is that women in the workplace are beginning to be treated not just as equals, but beginning to be promoted on the basis of merit, which is absolutely right. And not only is it right, it's good business sense. You'd be an insane business not to promote the best person, whatever colour, race, creed or sex they are.
Okay.
Merit must win the day.
Why has it taken so long, briefly, if you would.
Unlike Constance, I've never wanted to be a 73-year-old white man, but I understand the point, with no disrespect, David. But I understand the point, and that is that there do seem to be advantages for certain sections of the population. When it comes to the gender divide, sport is a male-dominated world, as is politics, as is the media, as is business. What I thought was interesting about the BBC Sports Personality, which I didn't realise, as you say, was it was 27 publications that chose. All those 27 sports editors were men. And interestingly, 2 of them were from Nuts and Zoo magazines, which I thought was odd to be well-known sporting magazines. But it just shows people who think that representation doesn't matter. The sports editor of the Manchester Evening News chose Patrick Vieira, who's retired, while Rebecca Adlington, who's a world champion swimmer, lost by 1 vote, getting on that shortlist.
You know so much.
The problem is the only way you're going to change things, and this might be unpopular to say, I'll say at the end of the show, is through quotas, positive discrimination. We don't like to talk about it, but that is the only way you get progress. Otherwise, we just have these endless discussions year after year after year.
Tiny thing, as I remember it, the last female to win Sports Personality of the Year was poor Zara Phillips, and the next day her sort of horse collapsed and she wasn't able to ride in the Olympics. So it might be a blessing that this doesn't affect our wonderful sports stars of the future.
Okay, right. Our time's up, I'm afraid. We have to stop. Apologies to those who've got your hands up. I'm already being ticked off for overrunning, as is the way with question time. We're going to be back. Now, this is the last programme of the year, curiously. We're going to be back in the new year, January the 12th. And we're going to be in London then, and the week after that, if you add 7 to, what's that, 8, 19th, 7, 8, 9, yeah, 19th. We're going to be in Shrewsbury, or either place, or both. If you want to come and join us either in London or there, the number to call, 0330 123 9988, as you know. You can also apply on our website. The address is there. Thank you all very much on the panel, and thank you, the people of Stoke-on-Trent, for coming here tonight for this edition of Question Time. Until 2012, from Question Time, good night.
Andy Osho on the